Malao?
I still think it's a risk because there's a lot that can happen between now and the maturing date.
There's a what? Sorry?
There's a lot that can happen between now and the maturity date because of unforeseen circumstances. So it's still borders on risk in as much as it's guaranteed. In as much as it's guaranteed, it still falls under a risk because between maturity and the date in which everything is executed, there's a lot that cannot go according to what was planned.
Okay, thank you so much. I want a third person to tell me what they think. Thank you, Kashia, and thank you, Malao. We go to Mehdi.
Good afternoon. Oh, yeah. Thank you, sir. For me, I would agree with Kashia. I would place it under certainty. So far, I think what is pertaining on the ground, in reality, the government bonds are the safest investments. The chances of default are almost zero. They are always honored, like on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehdi, for adding that. Can I have Joseph? Then we go to the next one.
Yes, I believe the government bonds are rated as the risk-free rate. So I think they are not a risk because of their
Great.
they are quoted at a rate, if I'm not mistaken.
Great. No, thank you. Thank you so much, Joseph. And indeed, that's the answer, Malao. Here we're talking about we are certain. You know, the risk is almost negligible. Also based on past precedents. There has never been a case where government has defaulted on their on TBs. And so this one is almost certain the return is guaranteed. I'll move to scenario number 2. A company that you work for, now, you know, there's been a lot of discussions around Zambia being the bread basket. And so the company that you work for is exporting maize to DRC. And then when you look at the historical data, there is a 70% chance of making a profit and a 30% chance of making a loss. Where would you classify this one? Isaac?
That's a risk.
The reason being?
Just even in the process of transporting, along the way, anything can happen. That's point number 1. So we can't even look for more reasons. Direct, that one.
That's correct. Anyone with an alternative view? So clearly here, you know, this one is a risk because, you know, anything can happen, like you were saying, just from the transportation itself. But also there is a lot of factors in terms of maybe the demand, the season, when you're exporting, the prices may go down and your profit margins can also reduce. And so this one obviously becomes a risk, but you can put in measures to try and control it. I go to the next one. Imagine you're offered a job today and you sign a 2-year employment contract with a fixed monthly salary. Where would you classify this? You know those nice emails that come from HR departments of organizations, and they're offering you the contract. So you sign 2 years, and then they even tell you are going to be going away with $100,000 per month. Where would you classify this? You people, you need to help Isaac. The other ones are not answering. So Isaac, I want you to be on standby. You are going to be the one to mark the person who will answer. Anyone? Malao?
That falls on the risk side. And the reason is simple. The contracts can be, there are main reasons that can lead to a contract being terminated.
Okay. Thank you so much, Malao. So Isaac, can you answer? Okay, before you come in, Isaac, let me hear from Mehdi and Kombe. And then Isaac, you're going to give us a final answer.
Okay, yeah. For me, I would place it under certainty because there's a contract, and probably that's why we are given loans when we walk into the bank with that contract, because there's that certainty to say every month that income will be coming. Should the company default, they have to pay you for the rest of the contract, provided the default is from the company side. So based on that, I would put it under certainty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehdi.
And if the default is on the other part, not the company.
Okay, let's hear from, before we come back to you, Malawi, let's go to Kombe, Toko, and then Isaac.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I think I also have the same view. For me, I think I would place it under certainty because there's already a contract in place, and I think there would be precedence of how the employer has managed, cases where an employee wishes to leave or they wish to terminate. Also, I would say certainty because already there are provisions in the Labor Act which provides for conditions on which a person is supposed to be relieved of employment before we even look at the contract which is there and what it stipulates in the contract. And if anything, I would know, of course, that if that is breached, there are other means like litigation that I would seek. So I think there's an element of certainty there. Thank you.
Thank you, Kombe. Toko, finally, and then Isaac.
Good afternoon, Doc. Good afternoon, everyone. So for me, I think it would be both certainty and risk. Certainty because it provides stability. I know the terms and conditions, that the terms of the agreement that are in place. And then I would say a risk because circumstances can change during those 2 years, either on my end or the employer's end. I think that's what I think. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask a question where you're saying it's on both. Can you insure yourself against your own negligence? Or when you get insurance, for instance, you're protecting yourself from externalities? Isaac, and then Kombe. We want to now conclude on this.
Okay, I think mine would, I'll place it on risk. And based on the definition that you've shared with us, there's precedence that we can refer to. I can even give an example. Talk of Faz coach, where there's a contract given, and then along the way, the coach is nowhere to be seen. So that comes as a risk to the team, because the team now will not have a coach for a period, even as litigation comes in, but still there's no guarantee that it would go Faz's way or it would go the coach's way. Then in addition, if you talk of a contract given, for example, a company offers you a job, then they email the contract to you, you sign and the representatives of the company sign. But then before that commencement date, something happens to the company or the company is declared bankrupt. What happens then to you? Do you sue the company for offering you that contract before it even takes off? So that's a question I think for me, I would classify it to be a risk.
Ooh, okay. Isaac, thanks for that. Kombe, final comment, then I give the conclusion.
Okay, I wish to, I'll get, I think I'll argue there where Isaac is saying that it would be uncertain. I think there's, like I said, when you are signing a contract, you already know the provisions in the law that a company can terminate employment if they want to restructure, for instance, or they feel that they should restructure, downsize. And the other one is when there's misconduct, of course. So you would have known, even when you're signing, there would be certainty that this and A and B can happen. So I think it's all the information is there. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me, colleagues? I think I lost connectivity. Okay. Kombe, did you finalize your submission? I think I
Yes, I did, sir. I was just saying that I took a different view from Isaac because I was thinking that the information is there when you are getting into that contract. The information is such that if a company will probably decide to downsize, there won't be that employment or the other regulation, the other conditions which are provided for that company in the law. So even as you are starting, there would be certainty that A, B, C, D would happen. So I think it would be there's an element of certainty because all the information or necessary information is already known beforehand.
hello. Isaac, you can come in. I don't know. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Or should I say I can hear you? I hope everybody can.
Let me just indicate that this one is indeed under certainty because when you sign a contract, it compels the company to compensate you at least for the period of that particular contract if you know the default will come from their end. For you, that contract is protecting you from any eventuality that may happen by the company towards yourself. And so here we're talking about conditions of certainty. We move to the next one. And I think, you know, all those different points we talked about, the provisions of the Employment Act, and wherever there is a contract, even in the first one, remember that's why I said we pack the first scenario that I'd given you, where you sign a government contract and in the contract they clearly state. Now that one is a bit controversial because government has gotten away with defaulting on contracts. But ideally, when you have a legal document that shows without any doubt that there are certain deliverables to be met, and then the payments or the obligations coming on the other party should also be fulfilled, then that one is under certain terms in terms of information. And the reason why we have contracts is to be able to hedge against, certain things happening. So we go to number 4, the fourth scenario. So if you are in the copper belt, for example, and you whether to invest in you work for a mining company, and this mining company is deciding whether to invest in a country where elections may result in completely new mining laws, but nobody knows what policies the new government will adopt. What kind of, where would you classify this one? And if you remember, we had a similar issue. Isaac, thank you for coming in. We had a similar issue between the PF regime as well as the UPND government when it comes to taxation laws in the mining sector. So where would you classify this one? Who do we start? Okay, let's start with Isaac and then Malawi.
I will classify it as uncertainty.
Okay. Short reason why?
Yeah, because we don't know what the new government would come up with, because they'll be new, and whatever ideas they'll have, no one knows. They are known to themselves as a party, okay, in their structures. So as ordinary citizens, as investors, we do not have any idea of what it is they will bring in. So we can't even make any reference. There's no precedence, because they are just within themselves. So only when they come into power will they be able to review their plans. Sometimes, you know how it is with politicians. During campaigns, they'll tell you A, B, C, D. But when they come, they'll say they'll do something completely different from what they were promising.
Okay, thank you so much. Malao, do you have the same view?
Yes, I actually share the same sentiment.
Okay, great. Fantastic. That's the correct answer, colleagues. Move to the next one quickly. If you're a farmer and you want to plant some maize, you go to the agro dealer and you buy certified seed with a guaranteed germination rate of 98%. Where would you classify that and why? Malao is going to mark whoever is going to raise their hand. You are a farmer and you go to an agro dealer to buy seed, and then you buy seed, you buy seed with it's like certified seed with a guaranteed germination rate of 98%. Where would you classify that?
Can I ask?
You are going to be the one to answer. So because you raised your hand first and you've been participating, so I want you to be able to mark the person who's going, the people who are going to try out on this question, Malam. So
Yes,
Kashia.
I don't necessarily need to answer. I just wanted to ask a very short question on the same scenario.
Go ahead.
Is this farmer is farming dependent on the rain season, or is a farmer that can farm in end season?
It's me out. Malao, did you make your point?
Yes, I can repeat if you didn't get me.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying, is this farmer dependent on the rain season, or he can he can do his farming throughout all the seasons.
Okay, I'll hold on to that answer. Let's hear from Kashia, and then you come and summarize it for us. Kashia.
So for me, I feel it will fall under risk. The reason why I'm saying that is because there's a track record, like we've seen before, how that seed produces under normal circumstances. So there's a probability that it can go well or not. So we have that information. So that's why it's going to fall under risk. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kashia. Anyone else? Just one more before we hand it back to, was it Isaac or Malau? Newton, come in. Okay. Okay, thank you for that. So now let's ask, was it Isaac, the one, who did I tell to mark this question? Was it Isaac?
Maybe I can come in. I didn't raise
Yes,
my hand though.
just now tell us the answer. Tell us the answer.
Oh, the one who's supposed to tell us the answer is Mr. Malao. So I'll say my my view. I think it's a risk. We've got precedents to refer to, and then also we may not know that indication on their brand, the percentage of it giving us good yield is not guaranteed. Maybe during the process of blending or their seed, maybe the additives were over added, were too much, or they were added in less quantity. So them they would be thinking, oh, it's done the usual way, it's going to give the much desired result. Meanwhile, there were errors during the period of adding those additives to the seed. So by the end of the day, you find that it gives us less much desired result.
Okay, thank you for that. So you're saying the answer is a risk. Malau, could you tell us the final answer?
Well, I'm going to agree with everyone that said it's a risk because of many eventualities that are involved in farming. I don't think I should make any further explanations, but the simple answer is it's a risk.
Okay. I'll ask you a similar question, and I want you to tell me if they fall in the same category. So a farm weather data that there is a 20% probability of a drought.
You were breaking, so maybe you could restart.
Okay, so I'm saying a farmer plants maize knowing that historical weather record indicates a 20% probability of drought. So this is the first question. This
Is it just from my end? The doc there.
Okay, I'm back. I don't know, the network has become a bit unstable on my end. And all of you are saying it's a risk. Where all of you are saying it's a risk, we indicated that it's about certified seed with a guaranteed germination rate of 98%. Whereas in the second one, we're talking about a farmer who plants, and based on historical weather data, there is a 20% chance of drought. Do both fall in the same category? That was the question. Are you able to hear me, colleagues?
When we started, we were unable to hear you, but we are now getting you. So maybe you could repeat the two scenarios.
So let me go over. The one I gave you, the one all of you are saying is a risk, is where you go to an agro dealer and you buy certified seed with a guaranteed germination rate of 98% germination rate. And then the other scenario, we're talking about a farmer who plants, and you know, from historical weather data, there is a 20% chance that there will be a drought. Do both of these scenarios fall under the same categorization? Richard.
Yes, Doc. I just joined a few minutes ago. I had a bit of a problem with connectivity. I don't know exactly what those categories are all about.
Okay. Okay, somebody will explain to you. Let's get to the point. So we're talking about, you know, the challenges that come in business. So the conditions of uncertainty where there is no past record of something happening and then it just occurs, and it may affect your business. And then we also talk about a risk. A risk is where you have an idea of the probability of something happening, and then you can put in measures to control it. And then we have now the third category, which is conditions of certainty, where you have perfect information about, you know, the business transactions you're doing or the way you're dealing with the market where you operate. And so the scenarios I'm giving, I'm asking the class to classify these scenarios on any of the three states of information. Either is it a risk, is it under conditions of uncertainty, or is it certain? That's what we're discussing. So I'll go to Kashia.
So they will both fall under risk. Because for the other one, you've given us a 20% probability. So with risk, the probability is known because of past experience. So that one, it falls under risk. Then the other one, whereby 80% is assured that it's a certified seed. So we know it's going to grow, but there is still that risk component of it. So that's the reason why I'm saying both of them will fall under risk. Thanks.
Okay, great. No, thank you so much. So like they say in an exam, the devil is in the detail, right? And so I don't know if there's anyone with a little bit of background in agronomy in the class. What the first scenario is talking about, you know, when you take a seed for trials before it can be certified, there are certain parameters they look at, and they also put the conditions under which it should be grown. And so if, for example, you buy that seed, you are required to plant it under those ideal conditions that they're telling you. Genetically, it means the seed can germinate. So there's a difference between just germinating and you having a good harvest. So the maize itself could actually germinate, but then if the environment under which you are growing it is not good, for example, maybe the rains don't continue and all those things, it will mean that that is not part of that guarantee given about germination. So germination is about, you know, the quality of the seed, and it has been certified. So in the statement, there is a use of the word certified. And so the first scenario is under conditions of certainty. The second scenario is indeed under risk. Do you get this explanation? Does anyone argue with that? Wisha, as a person who has just come in, does it make sense to you?
It does, Doc. Thanks so much.
Okay, so Malao, Isaac, Kashia, are you in agreement? Have you gotten the difference there?
So for me, maybe the key word there is certification. So if it is something that is certified, then there's no room for any manufacturer or manufacturer, what's this, or by default, just to when you say it's certified. So are we guaranteed to say there can never be any fault with the whatever that was done to make it certified? Like for example, if one was to go and buy petrol in a plastic container that is written or indicated as certified, so is there a probability of that plastic container igniting fire? And apart from that, like if you go in a butcher, you go and buy beef, then there is a scale that was certified. So is there room that that certified scale could also lose a bit of credibility? So I don't, just make me understand on the keyword, the seed being certified.
So the seed being certified is the genetic trials that are done, and they have to go, through a number of field testing trials in order for it, before it can be certified for consumption by the open market. So from a science and contractual perspective, germination is guaranteed, but whether or not you get the yield required depends on several other factors. And germination is the easiest that can be gotten because you just need the soil and water. So I think that's the key thing. The key thing is to look for those legal terms. And in business, that's why lawyers make a lot of money. Everything is in all these legal agreements. When it comes to like managing, we also look at the quality of institutions that should provide compliance and regulation. Like the Zambia Weights and Measures Agency, I don't know what it's called now, if that's the word, but the idea is that they need to all the time recalibrate, these weights, even filling stations and all those. And because those institutions exist, companies can rely on them. And which is why we invest a lot of money in having contracts that are able to cover against certain losses. And so when a company, for example, does not comply to certain minimum standards, they can be fined by the state. But from a business perspective, you need to also be clever to understand how you can avoid unnecessary costs, how you can minimize your risk by using the law of the land to protect your investment. So if those things, if you become risk averse, even in the presence of legal documents, it means you're not using your knowledge very well. Because when you have all these contractual things in front of you, then it becomes easy for you to navigate your way through. Isaac, does that answer your question? Wishad, I see your hand is up.
Yes, I just wanted to put my input of 75% certified seed. So the 75% certified seed is actually a known percentage, and therefore that is certain. It's supposed to be certain. It can't be risky because that 78% is actually known. And the fact that is known, it is certain. That is certain, regardless of conditionalities that would be there in terms of drought, in terms of how planting will be done, in terms of the depth of getting it out the soil on top of the seed for it to germinate well. That all is irrelevant because at the end of the day, the seed is certified and 78%. So that is known and is certain.
Great.
Then the probability of drought, 20%, 20%, for example, we talked about drought of 20%. That one is a risk. Yes, because the chance is known, which is actually 25%. But at least you've got a figure. You've got a figure that 20%, there's the 20% risk of drought, meaning 80% it may rain. So with those two figures that you have, obviously the risk is there that it may not be 20%, it may be either less or not. Well, that is just a probability, but that's a risk actually.
Correct. No, thank you, and spot on, Wishart. Thank you so much for adding your thoughts on this as well. I'm asking now my final question regarding this particular topic, and I want you to pay attention closely. So the company that you're working for is deciding whether to build a new factory. Management estimate and a 20% chance that it will fall. Is this certainty, risk, or uncertainty? Why? Okay, let's go in reverse. Malao and Isaac are answering the question. Let's start with you, Kashia.
For me, it will be two, either risk or uncertainty. So it will depend with the business or that building that we are doing, whether it's new to us or we've been dealing in that business. So if it's a new business at all, then it's going to fall under uncertainty. But if that has been our business, so we have these set precedents, and that's how come we have those estimates, and we know that there are chances that it will take off, so it will fall under risk. So risk if it's our usual business, and uncertainty
It's our usual business, Kashia.
if it's our usual business, then it will fall under risk.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thank you so much. Now let's come to Isaac and Malao. Do you agree with what Kashia has mentioned?
For me, I'll go for uncertainty because there's some estimation here, and it's not known what will be the result. It's more like it's a 50-50 because we've got 40%. Probably they did their study. They went and studied the market, and that's why probably there is that idea that came up for them to go and build another factory in that particular area. So because of that expectation, and after the study, probably they looked at it, say, okay, there's potential. But again, in as much as there's that potential, they cannot still tell exactly whether there will be positive response from the customers or not. So they are not sure. This is why the key word there, I think, is estimation of 40. It will work out 40 to 1. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Isaac. Malao.
I'm going to take a different view from Mr. Isaac, and I'm going to side with, was it Kashia, the first speaker?
Yes.
I think the fact that we have figures of either or, it Yes, it might be tempting to say it's uncertain, but it's actually a risk that you're taking. So it's either you're taking a risk of 40% success or a risk of 20% failure. So I'll go with risk.
Correct, correct. Thank you for that. Wishad. Wishad, are you there? I will not take away any words from what was mentioned by Malao, siding with Kashia. The key thing there, Isaac, is, and if you have your friends,
Doc,
yes,
Doc, I
yes.
wanted to comment something. Yes, what I was sorry, I was actually muted. I think my comments were not heard. What I was trying to put across is that the situation is an example of a risk because the possible outcomes are known, Doc. We have 40% chance of demand increasing, or 40% chance of demand remaining stable, and 20% of course of demand falling, going down. So these 40%, 20% and 10, 20, 40% and 20% are probabilities that are known. And therefore, the outcomes are actually known. So since outcomes are known, it's actually a risk. It falls under a category of a risk. Because when we talk of uncertainty, we're talking of where the possible outcomes are literally unknown. You don't know what comes out. But in this regard, we have 40%, we have another 40%, we have 20%. So this is 100% a risk category.
Correct, correct. No, thank you so much for emphasizing on that point. Please remember, colleagues, the idea is that when we talk about a risk, the outcome is unknown, but but the probabilities, the outcome is unknown, but the probabilities are known. And these are the figures that even Wishad has referred to just now. When you talk about uncertainty, it's both unknown outcome and unknown probability. That is your gauge whenever you want to look at these things. Okay, no, thank you. I think that was really a very good discussion regarding the whole concept of risk. And I'll just share with you quickly the slides. Okay, so you can see my screen. So this is what we are just from looking at now. So certainty, a decision made is perfectly informed in advance about the outcome of his or her decision. And for each decision, there is only one possible outcome that is known in advance. And so this is like in a perfect world, like, in perfect markets. When we talk about a risk, a situation where a decision maker is aware of all possible outcomes and the probability of each one occurring, but a decision may have more than one possible outcome. That's what makes the risks to be tricky when you're dealing with them. Uncertainty, a decision may have more than one outcome, and the decision maker does not have the precise nature of this outcome, nor can he objectively assign a probability of each occurring. So just like what I just mentioned, somebody should mute their mic. Mengwe, could you please mute your mic? So like I mentioned, the key for you is risk is equal to unknown outcome but known probability. Uncertainty is equal to unknown outcome and unknown probability. Clement, are you able to mute Mwengwe? Okay. We move to the next slide. Wishad, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that was an odd
Okay. Okay, great. Can somebody, Mwengwe, are you able to get me? There's somebody whose mic is unmuted and it's disturbing. Is there anyone who could mute this person or move them out of the class? For instance, if you decide to launch a new product as a manager, you have to carefully analyze each of the following variables, So risk analysis will involve quantitative and qualitative risk assessment, and then risk management and risk communication, and provide managers with a better understanding of the risk and the benefits associated with the course of action. And of course, it's really important that this is also looked at, from the practical perspective. And we're also going to look at a few scenarios, again, that would help us to, understand how to apply, the appropriate course of action when you are facing a particular risk that is in front of you. Probability of it happening is known, but then how can you hedge against it? What mitigation measures can you put to be able to understand that? So risk analysis, one of the things I really want you to remember is that risk analysis does not eliminate the risk, but it helps managers understand it so they can make better decisions, moving forward. A number of people have defined risk analysis, and when you look at it from a broader perspective, you may say it's going to be like a structured and systematic process of identifying, assessing, and evaluating the likelihood and potential impact of risks that are associated with a business decision. So we're talking about a business. And the purpose is to help you make an informed decision by balancing the potential benefits against the costs or the losses that come with such a decision that you are making. Now, why is the risk analysis important? So every business decision involves risk. It will involve one level of risk, whatever it is that you're going to do. And in all those scenarios I was giving you, if you want to invest in a new factory, you want to launch a new product, you want to enter a new market, you want to borrow money, or you want to acquire another company. So in making these business decisions, without proper risk analysis, as a manager of that business, you will simply be guessing. And so risk analysis is really an important aspect of managerial economics, because a new investor wants to come into the country. It's people like yourselves who can actually be consulted in terms of really understanding what structure, what form of a company can they set up if they're expanding or if they're coming in a new market, So risk analysis forms a bigger part of the work that you're going to be doing. What are the objectives? So when you talk about risk analysis, what are the objectives? So, risk analysis will help managers to achieve a number of things. Number one, to identify the possible risks in any business decision that you are involved in. And also, and this is why it becomes important, to estimate the likelihood of each risk occurring. And so there are certain terms like, inherent risk and residual risk. These are terms for a number of you that are already in the corporate world. You know what these words mean, and we're going to discuss them a little later. And so in risk analysis, you're looking at estimating the likelihood of each risk occurring. And then in risk analysis, you also want to assess the potential impact if at all that risk occurs. So the potential impact. And then you also want to compare the alternative decisions that may be there if you decide to go for this course of action, bid or no bid, apply or don't apply. So if you apply, what would happen? If you don't apply, what would happen? If you construct, what would happen? If you don't construct, what would happen? So this is part. You
Danny.
I lost connectivity. Are you able to hear me? Okay. Okay, great, thanks. And so I was talking about the objectives of somebody is trying to call. Just hold on. Okay, so I talked about the objectives of risk analysis, and it's really important. So number one, you want to identify the possible risks. Number two, you want to eliminate the likelihood of each risk occurring. You want to assess the potential impact of that risk if it occurs. You want to compare the alternative decisions. And most importantly, I emphasize, you want to develop strategies to reduce or manage that particular risk. And that's the point where I talked about in risk analysis, we talk about inherent and residual risk management. And ultimately, you want to improve the quality of your managerial decision making, and which is why as MBA students, you are taking this particular course, because what makes a good manager, what makes one company thrive compared to the other, is how they're able to calculate and navigate through the challenges and the risks that they're going to encounter as they deal with competition, as they deal with their clients, and as they enter and explore new markets. So this is really the whole concept of risk analysis. And risk analysis in itself has got several steps, and we can talk about them. Basically, 4 different categories of risk analysis. So the first one we want to look at is the risk identification itself. And under stage 1, in terms of risk identification, you want to first of all just ask yourself the basic question: what can go wrong in this particular company? Because in the company, you're strategizing almost all the time. You're saying, how do we become more efficient? How do we, have a larger market share? How do we better compete with our competitors? How do we improve the quality of our product? These are things that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. In those boardrooms, businesses in the corporate world, this is what they talk about. And so the first stage in risk analysis is for you to identify what could go wrong. And, it could be things like, low customer demand falling below the projected thresholds that you have. It could be also supply chain disruptions, you know, like, for example, the war that we had in Ukraine, and you know, the disruptions that happened and how they are affecting the supply and the flow of goods into Africa. And so those disruptions could also go wrong. Inflation is an issue. A lot of companies now, a number of companies that want to access financing, for a lot of the international creditors, what they're doing is that they are giving their loans in hard currency. So if you operate in a country that is quite volatile in terms of the exchange rate, like if the kwacha is not strong against the USD, it means there will be exchange losses that will come from you getting a loan in US dollar. So how can you hedge against that? So a company needs to have, you know, income streams in Forex to help them manage that risk. So this is an example of something that could go wrong. Maybe new competitors come on board. For example, you know, Zambia was dominating for a long time in the food sector. But then we have companies now that have come on board, Tredkin slowly going in there. And we also have Mikalile also that started, you know, a series of stores in the food subsector. And so competitors could also be there. And then there's regulatory changes as well that may happen. We saw it happen in the mining sector, where, you know, the mineral royalty taxes that were there under you know, the UPN, under the PF, the taxation regime totally changed. And so a lot of companies who are risk averse, they stopped their investment plans for Zambia because according to them, the investment environment wasn't stable. And one of the headers for the UPND government now, when they came into power, is that they promised to have very restrictive taxes for new investors. And which is why we've seen like a spike in investments going into the mines, because according to them, the investment climate is stable and there's no hidden taxes that are exploitative. And so these are examples of things you look at under the first one. So you look at factors within the business itself, and you also look at external factors in terms of what could go wrong. So that's stage number one. If you are taking your notes, stage number one is basically for you to identify what those different risks are. Stage number two, you're looking at assessing now the probability of those risks that you've itemized happening. And so even before we go into stage number two, in stage number one, you can classify and categorize the risks according to themes. And so it could be environmental risks, it could be economic risks, it could be market risks, it could be internal risks like, you know, human resource or capacity constraints within the firm. It could be technology. So you can classify them under the different themes as you are identifying those different types of risks. And then when you come to number two, stage number two, when you are assessing the probability of those risks happening, the basic question you're going to ask here is, how likely is it to happen? You know, those different things that you put there, like demand going down, how likely is it that demand is going to go down? And so you use like a dashboard, or maybe you categorize the way you rate the likelihood, low, medium, high, depending on, you know, what the data is telling you. So that's what you do under number two, low, medium, high, or you could put a percentage, you know, is it 20%, 30%? You can estimate based on the probability of that risk happening. The third stage you look at in risk analysis is now you want to assess the impact. If at all that risk happens, you know, what will happen? So you ask yourself a very basic question under this particular topic. You say, if this happens, how serious will it be? That is what you do under step three when assessing the impact of that risk. So potential impact potential impacts could be that you're going to lose revenue and or profits. So there's going to be some financial loss. The other potential impact could be that there's going to be damage to your reputation. So it could be a reputational risk. If at all, you're not improving the quality of your product, or not, mitigating or following up on the complaints that your clients have had, what impact can it have on, on the company? Or you could lose customers. So this is what you do under step number 3 in assessing the impact. And so you state what that impact could be to the business. And then number 4, which comes to the actions against, to mitigate the risks that you have identified. Number 4 is develop risk responses. And so you want to now come up with responses that will help you now deal with the risks that you have identified. And under here, if you look at the risk matrix of most organizations, they could state that, okay, this risk is outside our control. There's nothing we can do about it. We're going to avoid it. The other, response you could indicate in there would be that you're going to try and reduce the risk by putting in control measures or mitigation measures. The other action that you'd come up with is that you're going to transfer the risk. And remember what we said about, the entire legal system now comes in. So in transferring that risk, you're going to either maybe insure your property, sign agreements, all those different things. So when you do that, it means that you are transferring the risk, to some extent. And then alternatively, you can just accept. And you can discuss under what conditions can you have a risk that you just say, okay, this one, we just accept it and we're just aware of it and we'll be tracking it. So this is what you do under number 4. So we look at a practical example. So we have, and this is really what makes the entire risk analysis for an organization. So under 1, remember what I told you, you can put them under themes. Under step 1, when you're identifying the risk, you can put them under themes: economic, social, environmental, and the risks can be classified according to those themes. And then in assessing the probability, you either adopt the basic one is low, medium, high, extremely high, or unlikely. So add those different categorizations, or you can put actual percentages. So that would also be something that you can do. In assessing the impact, you also write a few notes about if these risks were to occur, what would be the impact on the business? Can it lead to loss of finances? Can it, cause damage to the institution? Can we lose customers? And then finally, now the risk response. And so in here, you agree. Am I going to reduce the impact of this risk? Am I going to accept it? Am I going to transfer it? Am I going to accept? These are the different things that you do. And all in all, this is about, creating enough information or coming up with enough information that will help you in your decision-making process. Because when you're managing a company, you are faced with all these different things that may come. So an example in terms of bringing this home, we think of Trade Kings. Trade Kings has been launching a number of products, over time. And, either be it a new biscuit brand, or it could be a new beverage that they have made. So suppose the company, Trade Kings, wants to launch a new energy drink on the market. So before launching, the management of Trade Kings, they're going to analyze several risks, that may affect, the success of that product that they want to launch. So they'll look at, for example, a market risk. And this is, what I talked about in stage 1. A market risk is about demand. If we launch this new product, this new energy drink, will customers buy it? Of course, they're just, thinking. Then they also look at another category, which would be a financial risk. They're asking themselves another question to say, would the sales cover the production costs? So that's on the financial side. You want to look at whether or not, this business will break even at the scale of production that they have planned it over. Then they also can look at another type of risk, which is a competition type of risk. Will competitors lower their prices if we launch this new product? So they're looking at, okay, when you want to launch, obviously the price of that new energy drink will be informed by the prevailing market prices for similar products on the market. So you may ask, from a competition perspective, when we launch ours, to stimulate demand, will the competitors lower their prices and then, push us out of competition? These are things that they can look at. They can also look at supply, for example. If they look at, for example, the ingredients or the raw materials that go into the manufacturing of that particular energy drink, will the ingredients or the raw materials that we need to use for this drink remain available for us to be able to use? And then finally, they may also look at, from a regulation perspective, will government regulations change, about energy drinks? There are certain markets that are quoted by the government, like, for example, even the tobacco industry. There are certain quotas in terms of how much they can sell, restrictions also in terms of age group, and all those different things. And so only after analyzing these risks, if you work for Trade Kings, can management decide whether to proceed or not. So that's why risk management is very important in any particular company. And then when it comes to risk management, if you noticed what I talked about, if you're taking notes, when you go to step number 2, where you now assign a value in terms of the likelihood, there is an element that I want you to have at the back of your minds. And so we're looking at quantitative and qualitative risk analysis. So in quantitative terms, you're assigning a value, which is known for certain, but sometimes there's also examples of the qualitative aspect of, of that particular risk that you're looking at. So quantitative risk analysis uses numbers and statistical methods. And this is what we're going to look at in this particular class. We're going to look at things like expected value. We'll look at probability analysis. We'll look at sensitivity analysis and decision trees, where we look at cause and effect, and we analyze all the consequences that may come when we alter and try and, tweak this particular decision and what form it may take. So in quantitative risk analysis, we're basically saying, for example, there is a 70% chance that we're going to, generate a profit if we venture into this new plant. And so that's on the quantitative side. Whereas qualitative risk analysis, and this is where, for example, on the risk rating, these are the 2 scenarios I gave you. On the risk rating, in the stages that I shared with you, still under stage 2, if you put percentages, it means you are using a quantitative approach in terms of assigning an actual value. But when you want to use qualitative, is where you basically just look at, you classify risks based on your own judgment and experience. And that's why you have things like unlikely, likely, low, medium, high, extremely likely. So you may put, certain broad categories in terms of where you're putting the risk, not an actual percentage. And, whether deciding on which approach to use, whether qualitative or quantitative, obviously depends on the type of risk that you're looking at. For example, if I talk about a political risk, the political environment appears unstable. There is no precise information. So just based on the way you understand the country dynamics, you can say, I think like in the coming elections now, do you think that the business environment will be stable? If there is a change of government, do you think there will be a complete shift in terms of the policy direction? Things like that. So there you may not have the correct information, and so you just broadly categorize the risk depending on the nature and type of the risk that you're looking at. And then the last part now of risk analysis, what you want to look at is that you have to now communicate that particular, risk analysis that you've done, to your organization and the entire production team. So it's only useful when you do this analysis that people are able to use it to make decisions within the firm. And so as a manager, you need to be able to explain the type, nature of the risks that you know exist, their likelihood, their impact, and most importantly, how they can be managed. And so good communication is going to help investors, employees, and stakeholders to be able to make decisions that are going to ensure that, you are a manager that is always alert. For example, lawyers are among the most risk-averse people. This happens with lawyers, it happens with doctors, and sometimes doctors who are like specialists. A number of them are selective also in terms of the type and the nature of the cases they deal with, because they want to project their experience and their knowledge as to whether they can deal with a particular case. And so they don't want to just take up a case because somebody has a condition and they're a doctor. So they want to have a high success rate, like in terms of managing, that particular condition. So we can pause there a little bit and reflect on, the whole issue of risk analysis. And then I'm going to ask you just a few questions, a few multiple choice questions on the discussion that we've had today, and it will be in plenary just like this, and people will be encouraged to give their answers. So I'll pause for 2 minutes just to sip a glass of water. Okay. So going back, stage 3 and 4. So number 1, you identify the risks. Remember what we said. Number 1, you identify those risks. Number 2, you assess the probability of that risk happening. So what I said is that under 1, you classify them according to themes, just basically what could go wrong. And then number 2, those same risks, now you begin to look at what is the probability of these risks happening, coming true. That's number 2. And this is where we said we can either use the qualitative approach or the quantitative approach in assigning the probability. So you can either put quantitatively a percentage or qualitatively a category, low, medium, or high. That is on number 2. And then number 3, it's assessing the impact. When that risk happens, what would be the impact on the company? So under this one, it could be loss of customers, loss of revenue, damage to reputation. These are different things that may happen. And then number 4, which is the most important one, is now the risk response. What are you going to do in managing those same identified risks? And so you may decide to reduce the risk by putting in control measures. You may decide to avoid the risk, or you may transfer the risk, or you may accept it. ways you can
Okay,
manage your risk.
good.
Richard, I don't know if it was you. Your mic is unmuted. Okay. So can we proceed? So I'm going to give you just a few questions, and please pay attention. I'm looking forward to seeing people that have not answered as well to answer this question. Richard. So Malawi said D. Richard.
I think it's C. You can, the others, yeah, so C, you cannot eliminate all business risks.
Okay. Correct. Toko says C as well. Richard, what do you say?
C.
Okay. Correct. Correct. Thank you. I go to the next one. Which of the following is most likely to involve decision making under risk? Which of the following is most likely to involve decision making under risk? A, investing in a technology that has never existed before. B, choosing between investment options using historical probability data. C, predicting government policy after an expected coup. And then launching a product without any market information. Should I read it again? Okay, so just give me a moment. Let me try and put them on the slide. Just give me a moment, it'll be easier. Okay, so there we are. Is anything showing on your screen? Is anything showing on your screen?
Nothing is showing.
Nothing is showing. Okay. Almost done. Duplicate. Okay. Mm-hmm.